Elena's heels clicked against the marble floor, each step echoing in her ears like a warning bell. She hated parties like this, too many glittering gowns, too many masks of perfection, too many eyes scanning, judging. But she couldn't say no when her best friend had begged her to come along. Just a little champagne, some dancing, and maybe a distraction from your breakup, her friend had chirped. Breakup. Elena's stomach tightened. That word alone was enough to send a shiver down her spine. She had hoped tonight would be a way to step outside the storm her life had become. But the moment she saw him, Daniel, the ex she had spent months trying to forget, standing near the bar with his crooked smile and his hand on another woman's waist, her plan for the night shattered. Her pulse raced. She had to move, had to escape before he saw her. But the crowd pressed in from every side, sequins and perfume suffocating her. Her eyes darted around the glittering ballroom for a way out. And then she saw him. A tall man stood slightly apart from the crowd, his posture relaxed yet commanding. He wasn't surrounded by sycophants or fake laughter. He was simply observing, glass of whiskey in hand, dark eyes scanning the room as though he was reading everyone's secrets. Something about him tugged at her, mysterious, grounded, safe. Before her courage could falter, Elena slipped through the throng and went straight to him. "Please," she whispered breathlessly, grabbing his arm as though her life depended on it. "Just pretend you know me." The stranger looked down at her, one brow arching. His gaze was sharp, assessing, but not unkind. "Are you in trouble?" "Not really," she muttered, though her grip tightened. My ex is here. He can't see me alone." For a second, silence stretched between them, the sounds of clinking glasses and a string quartet floating in the background. Then his lips curved, not quite a smile but close. "Very well," he said smoothly, lowering his glass. "Shall I be your rescuer tonight?" Relief washed through her. "Yes, please." Without hesitation, he slipped an arm around her waist, pulling her closer. Elena's breath hitched. His touch was firm but steady, his presence immediately forming a shield between her and the rest of the party. She leaned into him, surprised at how natural it felt. "Smile," he murmured against her ear. "If he's watching, he should think you're perfectly happy." Elena forced a smile, though her cheeks warmed as she tilted her face up to him. He was striking, sharp jawline, dark hair, eyes that seemed to see right through her. He wasn't the kind of man who blended into parties. No, he commanded them. "Better," he said softly, his voice like velvet laced with steel. She tried to focus on anything but his nearness, but his cologne, subtle, earthy, wrapped around her senses, making it hard to think. For a moment, she forgot Daniel even existed. They moved slowly toward the dance floor, his hand guiding her as though they had done this countless times before. "You're good at this," she whispered. "I've had practice." His lips twitched. "Though usually women introduce themselves before clinging to me." Elena flushed. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." "Don't apologize," he cut in gently. "I rather enjoy the surprise." The music shifted into a slow waltz, and before she could protest, he drew her into the rhythm. His steps were precise, leading her effortlessly. Elena hadn't danced in years, yet somehow with him it felt easy, natural, almost inevitable. Her mind flickered back to Daniel across the room. He was watching, she could feel it. But for once, she didn't care. Let him see her in someone else's arms. Let him wonder. As the song ended, she pulled back slightly, realizing she still didn't know this stranger's name. "Thank you," she murmured. "I should probably let you get back to your evening." He didn't release her. Instead, his gaze deepened, searching hers. "Why do I feel like you're still running?" Her breath caught. She should have lied, brushed it off with a laugh. But his eyes pinned her in place, and the truth slipped out. "Because I am." Something unreadable flickered across his face. Then he finally released her, though his voice was low, steady. "Stay. At least until you're ready to stop." Elena hesitated, torn between gratitude and curiosity. Who was this man who spoke with such quiet authority, as though the world bent to his will? Before she could ask, a voice rang out near the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our host tonight, Mr. Adrian Blackwell." The room erupted in applause. Elena blinked, confused, until her mysterious stranger set down his glass and strode toward the stage. Her jaw dropped. Her rescuer. The man she had clung to. The one who had just held her as though she belonged nowhere else. He was the host, and not just any host. Adrian Blackwell, billionaire, CEO. The elusive name whispered in business circles and headlines. Elena's heart thundered in her chest. She had danced with Adrian Blackwell, clung to him like a lifeline, and he had let her. On stage, Adrian spoke with calm authority, thanking the guests, acknowledging his team, outlining a new philanthropic venture. But every so often, his gaze flicked back to her, as though he hadn't forgotten for a second that she was there. By the time the speeches ended and the crowd dispersed into chatter, Elena was still rooted to the spot, her mind reeling. He returned to her side effortlessly, as though no one else in the room mattered. "You're staring," he said quietly, amusement in his tone. I didn't know," she stammered. "You're Adrian Blackwell, and you're Elena," he replied without missing a beat. Her lips parted. "How do you? You mentioned your name when you thanked me. I remember things." Heat rushed to her cheeks. "I feel ridiculous. I grabbed you without even knowing who you were. I rather liked it," he said simply, eyes glinting. "Most people approach me with an agenda. You approached me with honesty. Desperation, perhaps, but it was real." Elena swallowed hard. His words sank deeper than she expected. She had spent months feeling invisible, discarded by Daniel, her confidence shattered. And now, here was Adrian Blackwell, billionaire, host of the evening, telling her she was real. "Still," she said nervously, "I didn't mean to intrude on your night." "You didn't intrude," he said, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "You changed it." Her chest tightened. "Adrian." He leaned closer, his presence steady, unshakable. "Stay a little longer, Elena. Don't run this time." And for the first time in months, she didn't want to. Elena adjusted the strap of her dress for the third time that evening, wishing she hadn't let her best friend talk her into this. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers, champagne flutes sparkled in manicured hands, and laughter drifted in waves across the polished marble floor. It was the kind of event meant for people who never doubted themselves, who looked at a crowd and saw opportunity instead of danger. She had promised herself she would endure an hour, 2, at most, before slipping away unnoticed. But then, across the room, she saw him. Daniel. Her ex-boyfriend stood at the bar, leaning casually against the counter, that same crooked smile curving his lips. It used to melt her. Now it made her stomach twist. Worse, his hand was on another woman's waist, fingers brushing her like a claim. Elena's throat went dry. She could almost feel Daniel's gaze searching the room, and panic flooded her. She wasn't ready for this. She wasn't ready to see him, not when the wounds were still so fresh. She had to move. She had to find cover before he noticed her. Her eyes darted around the room until they landed on him. A tall stranger stood slightly apart from the crowd, a glass of whiskey in his hand. Unlike the others, he didn't seem interested in schmoozing or gossip. He was simply watching, his dark eyes sweeping the ballroom with quiet authority. Something about his stillness drew her. He looked untouchable, unbothered, like the kind of man no one dared cross. Without thinking, Elena slipped through the crowd and stopped in front of him. "Please," she blurted, breathless. "Pretend you know me." The man blinked, brows lifting in surprise. His gaze was sharp, assessing, but not unkind. "Are you in trouble?" "Not exactly," she muttered, though her grip tightened around his sleeve. "My ex is here. If he sees me alone, it'll be bad. Please." For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then the corner of his mouth curved. "Very well," he said smoothly, setting down his glass. "Shall I play the role of your savior tonight?" Relief washed through her. "Yes, thank you." He slipped an arm around her waist with casual ease, pulling her against him. Elena's breath caught. His touch was firm, steady, grounding. She leaned into him instinctively, her panic easing. "Smile," he murmured, his voice low and rich. "If he's watching, you'll want to look radiant." She forced a smile, though her cheeks burned under his gaze. Up close, he was devastatingly handsome, dark hair, chiseled features, eyes that seemed to hold entire worlds behind them. He wasn't just attractive, he was magnetic. He guided her onto the dance floor as the orchestra shifted into a waltz. His movements were precise, leading her effortlessly through the steps. "You're good at this," she whispered. "I've had practice," he said with a faint smile. "Though usually women introduce themselves before clinging to me." Elena flushed. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." "Don't apologize," he cut in gently. "I rather like it." The music wrapped around them, and for the first time that evening, Elena felt safe. Scene. Even Daniel's shadow faded as she followed the stranger's lead. But as the song slowed to its final notes, reality intruded. She was in the arms of a man whose name she didn't even know. "Thank you," she said softly, stepping back. I should probably let you get back to your evening. His gaze lingered on hers, unreadable. Why do I feel like you're still running? Her chest tightened. She should lie, make an excuse, but something in his voice pulled the truth out of her. Because I am. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he inclined his head slightly, releasing her. Stay, he said quietly. At least until you're ready to stop. The words stayed with her long after he disappeared into the crowd. She didn't even know his name. And then, moments later, the host was announced. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our host tonight, Mr. Adrian Blackwell. The room erupted in applause. Elena turned toward the stage, only to freeze. Her mysterious rescuer was walking up the steps, commanding the room with effortless power. Adrian Blackwell, the billionaire whose name filled headlines, the elusive CEO whispered about in business circles. Her heart skipped a beat. The stranger she had clung to was the man everyone else had come to admire. Part 2. Elena could hardly process what she was seeing. Adrian Blackwell, billionaire magnate, was the man who had just held her close, whispered for her to smile, and shielded her from the ghost of her past. He spoke with calm confidence, thanking his guests, and outlining a new philanthropic initiative. The audience hung on his every word, but more than once, his gaze flicked back to her, as though he hadn't forgotten the woman who had appeared out of nowhere and claimed him for protection. By the time the applause died down, Elena's legs felt rooted to the floor. She wanted to vanish, yet curiosity held her still. Adrian returned to her side as though no one else in the room mattered. You're staring, he murmured, amusement dancing in his eyes. I didn't know, she stammered. You're Adrian Blackwell, and you're Elena, he replied easily. Her lips parted. How do you? You mentioned your name when you thanked me. I don't forget things like that. Heat rushed to her cheeks. I feel ridiculous. I threw myself at you without even knowing who you were. I rather liked it, he said, his tone steady. Most people approach me with an agenda. You approached me with honesty. Desperation, you mean, she muttered. His eyes softened. Even desperation has its truths. Elena looked down at her hands, uncertain. She had spent months drowning in the aftermath of her breakup, questioning her worth, her choices, everything. Yet here she was, standing with a man who could command entire industries, and he was looking at her as though she mattered. Still, her defenses rose. You don't even know me. Not yet, he agreed. But I'd like to. The simplicity of the words disarmed her more than any grand gesture could have. For a moment, she let herself imagine what it might mean, being seen not as Daniel's discarded lover, but as someone worthy of Adrian Blackwell's attention. I don't belong in your world, she said softly. Perhaps not, Adrian admitted. Then his gaze deepened, steady and unflinching. But tonight, you belong here. With me. Her breath caught. The ballroom around them blurred, voices fading into background noise. All she could see was him, all she could feel was the calm strength he exuded. For the first time in months, she didn't feel like she was running. And as Adrian offered his hand again, inviting her back into the dance, Elena realized that what had begun as desperation might just be the beginning of something she never expected, something real.